When the narcissist finally realizes you were never the weak or foolish person they first imagined, something deep begins to shift. Sit with that for a second. Weak and foolish are not always the words they would say out loud. Most of the time, they would never use language that blunt because they still want to look calm, fair, and reasonable. They want to appear like the person who simply sees things more clearly than everyone else. But under their polite corrections, under the small remarks that make you feel confused, under the quiet suggestions that you are too emotional, too sensitive, or not fully understanding what is happening, there is often one hidden belief. They believe you can be managed. They believe your view can be shaped. They believe your reactions can be guided. They believe your reality can be bent just enough to fit what they need. That is the true meaning underneath all of it. They did not choose you because you looked openly weak. In many cases, they were drawn to your strength. Real strength is exciting to them because breaking it gives them more of a feeling of power. But even then, something in the early dynamic made them think you were workable, easy enough to influence, predictable enough to control. That is the word that matters here. Workable, manageable. That was the private conclusion. And the moment they realized they got that conclusion wrong, the whole emotional structure of the relationship starts to shake. This is not a small moment. It is one of the most important turning points in the entire story. Stay with me because what happens next explains so much of what people feel but never fully understand after living through this kind of relationship. To understand that moment, you first have to understand how the narcissist formed that first opinion of you. It was not one quick judgment made in a single afternoon. It was a running process happening in the background from the start. They were reading patterns, collecting signals, watching what moved you, what softened you, what made you open up, what made you second guess yourself, and what you wanted badly enough to ignore things that normally would have made you step back. This process is not always fully planned in a cold, detailed way. It can be more automatic than that, more like a system they have practiced for years without even naming it. They are not studying you to build true closeness. They are not learning your inner world in a loving, equal way. They are scanning for usable information. They want to know what hurts, what matters, what scares you, what history shaped you, what need inside you still waits to be met. Then they move toward those places with almost perfect timing. During the love bombing stage, it can feel magical. It can feel like someone finally sees you. But that early understanding is not always built for care. It is often built for access. They learn what to say, where to comfort, where to mirror, where to agree, and where to create a bond that feels rare and fated. All of that helps them build a map. And inside that map is one central belief. This person can be worked with in the ways I need. This person is more open to shaping than they know. This person may be stronger than they seem, but I can still steer this. That is the early setup. And it is exactly why the later collapse of that belief hit so hard. What they missed was not fake. It was not something you were hiding on purpose. It was simply the part of you they did not know how to see. Their system is very sharp when it comes to spotting pain, hunger, longing, insecurity, and old wounds. It is much less skilled at recognizing quiet depth. It does not easily detect deep awareness when that awareness is calm. It often cannot read the kind of person who does not need to announce their wisdom to have it. So they saw your vulnerability, yes. They saw your hope. They saw your past pain. They saw your wish to connect and to believe and to make things work. But they missed the rest. They missed the steady part of you that watches before it speaks. They missed the kind of patience that is not weakness at all, but strength that does not waste itself in every moment. They missed the kind of intelligence that does not rush to prove itself. They missed the slow-building clarity that keeps recording everything even in the middle of confusion. And that is the great irony. Their reading of you was not fully wrong. It was only incomplete. The pieces they found were real. The needs they touched were real. The personal history they mirrored back to you was real enough on the surface. But the deeper structure underneath all that, the part that would one day see through them, stayed outside their frame. And this matters more than people realize, because the person they thought they were managing was only one layer of you. Behind that layer was another self, one that was seeing more than they knew, one that was surviving, learning, connecting dots, and holding on to a truth they had no idea was growing stronger by the day. And when both of those sides become visible at once, that is when their certainty starts to crack. The moment of realization usually does not come like a movie scene with one huge dramatic reveal. It comes through buildup, through repetition, through a series of moments where your response simply does not follow the script they expected. Maybe they use a familiar line and it lands flat. Maybe they push a button that always worked, but this time you stay calm. Maybe they create confusion and instead of spiraling, you go quiet in a different way. Maybe you say very little, but what you do say carries a clarity they were not prepared for. The first time this happens, they often explain it away. They tell themselves you are tired, stressed, distracted, hormonal, upset, or off balance. They do not immediately assume their map is wrong. They assume their timing was wrong. So they adjust. They try a softer version, or a harder version, or a sweeter version, or a more wounded version. Same tool, new angle, but then the same thing happens again and again. The reaction they counted on does not fully arrive. The confusion they used to create no longer spreads in the same way. Your mind is not moving inside the box they built for you. This is the beginning of real discomfort for them. Not yet full understanding, but a rising sense that something is off. The map keeps failing to explain the territory. That failure creates tension inside them. And because openly admitting they were wrong is extremely hard for them, the shift first shows up in a more subtle form. Their attention changes. They begin watching you more closely, not with relaxed confidence, with caution, with monitoring, with an alertness that was not there before. And if you are paying attention, you can feel it. You can feel that they are no longer moving through you as if you are fully known ground. They have sensed another layer, and now they are trying to find it. This is where the change becomes visible in a way many people feel but cannot easily explain. You might expect them to back away, or explode right away, or disappear for a while and come back with a new plan. Sometimes that happens later, but often the first real shift is stranger than that. They become more careful with you, not kinder, not more loving in a healthy sense. Just careful, very careful. In certain conversations, it is almost as if they suddenly realize that you are hearing more than just their words. You are hearing the design under the words. You are catching the setup, the twist, the hidden pressure, the gap between what is being said and what is actually meant. That awareness unsettles them, because a huge part of their power came from using their tools without self-doubt. Their confidence was part of the manipulation itself. It was the force that made you question your own view. When someone lies with complete certainty, blames with total calm, or rewrites a story with a straight face, the confidence alone can make the other person feel shaky. But once that confidence develops even a hairline crack, the whole thing feels different. The same line no longer lands the same way. The gaslighting feels thinner. The charm feels slightly forced. The blame sounds more rehearsed. There is a hesitation in the emotional texture, even if the words are familiar. And if you have been waking up inside this dynamic, you notice it fast. Maybe not with a neat sentence in your mind, maybe not in a fully conscious way at first, but your body notices, your nervous system notices. You start to realize that they know something has changed, and this is the part people should never ignore, because once they sense that you know more than you are supposed to know, every exchange starts running on new rules. And if you miss that shift, you can get pulled back into false hope without understanding what is really happening. Once the realization becomes solid in them, their response often moves in a pattern. The first phase is testing, quick tests, small traps, subtle lines dropped into conversation like bait. They say something that only works if you are still standing inside the reality they created. They make a comment that depends on you accepting their version of the past, or they casually frame an event in a way that used to push you into defense, apology, or confusion. Then they watch closely. They are not just listening to your words. They are measuring your point of view. Are you still inside the fog, or are you outside it now? Are you still trying to explain yourself to them, or are you responding from a place that sees the structure of the game? This stage can happen fast. It can look small from the outside, but internally, it is a major checkpoint for them. And when your response comes from outside their script, it lands like confirmation. Maybe you stay neutral. Maybe you decline to defend yourself. Maybe you say something clear and short. Maybe you do not react at all in the expected way. That is enough. They see it. The truth settles. You are not the person they first measured. Or at least you are not only that person. The version of you they counted on no longer stands alone. There is now another presence in the room, a more awake version, a more informed version, a version that sees through the mechanism instead of only feeling its effects. And once they confirm that, the sequence moves into its next stage very quickly. This next part is where many people get thrown off, because instead of immediate attack, you may see a sudden return of warmth. And if you do not understand why, it can feel like the relationship is finally getting better. This is why so many people get pulled back in right when they were closest to true clarity. After the testing comes a sudden rise in charm, attention, and apparent emotional investment. It can look almost beautiful at first. Conversations may feel softer. There may be more eye contact, more curiosity, more laughter, more tenderness, even small moments that feel strangely genuine. They may appear more open, more reflective, more emotionally available than they have been in a long time. It can feel like the early stage again, though not always as intense. Enough to stir memory, enough to wake up hope, enough to make you think, maybe this is the real person, maybe this is the breakthrough. Maybe now that I have held my ground, they finally respect me. But that is not what is happening. Stay with me, because this is the turn that confuses people the most. This warmth is usually not proof of change. It is strategic recalibration. They have realized you are seeing too clearly, and now they are trying to soften that clarity. They want to restore conditions where your vision blurs just enough for their methods to work again. They are not reconnecting in a healthy way. They are reintroducing emotional fog through pleasure instead of pain. That is why it can feel so convincing. Pain makes people tense. Warmth makes people open. If they can bring back enough sweetness, enough hope, enough emotional reward, maybe you will stop tracking so carefully. Maybe you will question your own insights. Maybe you will think the dark pattern is over. This is not always conscious in a step-by-step sense, but it follows a clear logic. The moment they realize fear is losing its force, they may switch to affection. The moment guilt stops pulling you in, they may try vulnerability. The moment confusion fails, they may offer connection. Same goal, different road. And if you do not recognize it, you may hand back the ground you fought so hard to reclaim. What makes this stage so powerful is that it touches the exact part of you that always wanted the relationship to become real. Not perfect, just real. People often do not stay in these dynamics because they enjoy pain. They stay because there were moments, especially early on, that felt meaningful, rare, and emotionally true. So when the narcissist suddenly becomes more present, more attentive, or more emotionally textured, it does not just affect your mind. It reaches the grieving part of you, the loyal part, the hopeful part, the part that still wants to believe all of this can be saved if only both people try. That is why this phase can feel almost harder to resist than the openly cruel phase. Cruelty pushes you away. False warmth pulls you back in. And yet beneath the surface, there is a major difference now. You are not where you were before. You may still feel moved. You may still feel tempted. You may still want to believe. But a deeper part of you is watching. You notice how quickly the warmth appears after you stop reacting the old way. You notice how certain topics are handled with extra care. You notice how some moments feel real while others feel placed there like soft lighting in a staged room. And that noticing matters, because once you begin seeing the rhythm, the magic weakens. The whole performance becomes harder to fully enter, even if part of you still wants to. And this is where the narcissist feels something they deeply dislike. They feel uncertainty. They feel the loss of automatic control. They feel that the person in front of them is no longer emotionally accessible in the same old way. That does not usually lead to peace. It leads to strain. Because once the softer strategy fails to completely restore the old balance, a darker reaction often begins rising underneath it. At that point, the narcissist is dealing with a kind of exposure that is extremely hard for their system to tolerate. It is not just that you see them differently, it is that you may see them accurately. That is the real injury. They can handle being disliked more easily than being clearly understood. Because dislike can be blamed on jealousy, bitterness, immaturity, or misunderstanding. But clear perception is much more threatening. Clear perception means their story is losing control. It means the hidden structure behind their behavior is becoming visible. It means someone standing close enough to know the truth is no longer trapped inside the version of reality they worked so hard to build. And that creates pressure. Sometimes the response is more testing. Sometimes it is stronger guilt. Sometimes it is sudden sadness, illness, crisis, or dramatic vulnerability. Sometimes it is anger disguised as disappointment. Sometimes it is a strange mix of all of them. But underneath every version is the same question. Can I still get this person back into position? Can I still make them doubt what they know? Can I still turn their heart against their own clarity? And if the answer starts becoming no, that is when their behavior can sharpen. Not always loudly, sometimes in cold ways, sometimes in petty ways, sometimes through silence, distance, strange contempt, withheld affection, or a chilling politeness that feels more hostile than shouting. Because now you are no longer just a source of attention or comfort. You are also a threat to the system they built around themselves. That is why people often say the relationship felt different after a certain point. It did. Once they knew you knew, nothing was simple anymore. Even the sweet moments carried tension. Even the quiet moments felt watched. Even normal conversations seemed to have another layer running under them. And that feeling was real. You were sensing the exact moment when the hidden battle stopped being one-sided. This is also the stage where many people start underestimating themselves. They think, if the narcissist reacting this strongly, maybe I did something wrong, maybe I became cold, maybe I became too guarded, maybe I caused the distance. But often what changed was not your cruelty. It was your visibility. You became harder to script, harder to bait, harder to define for them. And when manipulators cannot easily define you, they often become agitated. Not because you turned into someone bad, but because you turned into someone free. That freedom may still be incomplete. You may still be emotionally tangled. You may still cry, second-guess yourself, miss them, hope, return, or feel broken for a while. None of that cancels the shift. The shift is not about never feeling pain again. It is about no longer being fully governed by the false world they created around you. Once that happens, they feel it. They may not say it. They may not even fully understand it in words. But they feel the loss of smooth access. They feel the resistance of a mind that is no longer fully available for rewriting. And here is what matters most. That realization in them often happens before you fully trust your own awakening. In other words, they may know you are slipping out of their system before you even realize how much clarity you already have. That is why their behavior can change at a time when you still feel confused. Do not let your remaining confusion fool you into thinking no progress has happened. The very fact that their old methods are losing precision is evidence of change, evidence that your inner map is getting stronger than their outer script, evidence that the part of you they failed to see from the beginning is now impossible for them to ignore. And once that part is active, the relationship cannot go back to what it was. The illusion has already been damaged too deeply. What happens next depends on many things, but the deeper truth stays the same. Once a narcissist realizes you are not who they thought you were, they can no longer move through the relationship with the same relaxed confidence. The old certainty is gone, even if they keep acting powerful, even if they keep trying the same lines, even if they act casual and untouched. Something has been interrupted. They have seen that you are capable of watching them in a way they did not expect. They have seen that your silence may hold understanding, not surrender. They have seen that your calm may be discernment, not defeat. They have seen that your patience was never simple passivity, and that changes the chemistry of every exchange. You may still have hard days. You may still feel pulled by memory, grief, guilt, attraction, fear, or old conditioning. But the deeper turning point has already happened. A part of you has stepped outside the frame. A part of you now sees the machine while it is running. And once you see that, something inside you begins reorganizing. Slowly at first, then more clearly. You stop asking only how to make the relationship work. You start asking what this relationship has been asking you to betray in yourself. You stop focusing only on their moods, their wounds, their promises, their distance, their charm. You start noticing your own breath again, your own body, your own truth, your own exhaustion, your own wisdom. And that is the real reason this moment matters so much. It is not only the moment they realize you were never easy to manage, it is also the moment your deeper self begins realizing it too. And if you keep listening to that part, really listening, the entire future opens in a different direction. Not because they suddenly change, but because you no longer disappear inside their version of who you are. So if you have felt this shift, if you have sensed them watching you more carefully, softening suddenly, testing strangely, growing cold in hidden ways, or reacting with tension when you simply stayed clear, do not dismiss it. There is a reason it feels different. The balance of reality has changed. You are no longer standing where they first placed you in their mind, and that is why the dynamic becomes unstable. They built their confidence on a reading of you that was only partly true. They saw the wound, but not the wisdom. They saw the hope, but not the depth. They saw the openness, but not the observer standing behind it all. When that observer steps forward, even quietly, the whole relationship enters a new chapter. This does not mean the path becomes easy. Sometimes this stage is the most emotionally confusing of all, because the mask may become sweeter just as the truth becomes clearer. But if you hold on, if you trust what you are beginning to see, if you refuse to trade your clarity for another short season of false closeness, then something powerful happens. Their realization stops being the center of the story. Yours becomes the center, and that is the shift that matters most. Not their shock, not their strategy, not their discomfort. Yours. The moment you realize that the strength they failed to read was there all along, the moment you realize your confusion was never proof of weakness, it was often the normal response of a healthy mind inside an unhealthy pattern. The moment you realize that seeing clearly, even while grieving, is still seeing clearly. And once that truth lands, really lands, the relationship may still make noise around you, but it no longer gets to define you. That is the new look of this story. Not just surviving the manipulation, outgrowing the role they wrote for you. And if that is where you are now, keep going, because the part of you they missed may be the very part that saves your life.